All right. Welcome everybody to Whiskey Wednesday. Today with us, we have John Shu, we have Pablo Goldbarg, and we have Lorri Kern of Raising Glasses and Catador Itinerante.
Itinerante, yes.
Itinerante. He got a lovely spread of world whiskeys, single malt scotches, and rum. I think this is actually probably one of the more eclectic tastings that we've had recently. I'm really excited to kind of just get started, but I'd love to hear how you guys got into the industry.
Well, my story is kind of short.
Yeah.
8, 10 years ago, I was probably here in those weekends in February, those madness of people and whiskeys here, uh, drinking and learning. And it was until 2018, 2019 that I decided that I fell in love with some world whiskeys and also with independent bottlers.
Yeah.
So I by that point I started a blog in Spanish, and I started working in Gordon's, and then the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm.
So a year after the pandemic, I started working in Norfolk Wine and Spirits,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea of my company continue. And actually, I created my LLC in 2019. If any of you have a small business in Massachusetts, you know that was a bad idea, because I started paying 500 a year since 2019, and I got my products this year.
Yeah.
So
Oof.
after that, 2022 was a pivotal year for me because I turned 50, and I took that excuse to travel to Europe.
Yeah.
And in that exploratory trip, I went to world distilleries. One of them you're gonna try tonight, and I managed to have a birthday ride between Whiskey Live Paris and the whiskey show in London.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a great time, and I met a lot of whiskey distilleries from around the world. And the last year and a half, it was a big push for me to make it real. So here we are with my whiskeys.
Fantastic. And John, I know you and Lorri have, backgrounds that don't stem directly from spirits. Where did you guys get started?
Not at all. Yeah. Hi. So I'm John, and this is my business partner and wife, Lorri. She doesn't have a mic, but it doesn't matter because she tells me what to say anyways. So
It's a
she also doesn't love being on camera, so if she edges that way, you'll know why. So yeah, so we are raising glasses. We're the entire company. In addition to being independent bottlers, we're also distributors. So Pablo is one of the brands that we're very proud to distribute, just to kind of set the table. But yeah, you're right. We didn't start off in this industry at all. We've done a lot of startups. Some of them have been in technology, market research, music, entertainment, and that kind of thing. None of them had anything to do with alcohol. But
what led you
happened?
down this path?
Well, we started just collecting. We started with bourbon, and then we moved into Scotch, and then we kind of transitioned into rum. But we had a collection, a pretty decent collection. Many of you probably have a collection like this. But in 2018, we started buying casks just as consumers.
Mm-hmm.
So we started with New Riff. I'm sure many of you know of New Riff in Newport, Kentucky. We bought 2 casks from them.
Sure.
And then we would drive the casks to Privateer up in Ipswich. So Privateer probably makes the best rum in the United States. And we would age them in our New Riff casks, and we would just share them with friends and family, and share money. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're not communists, so we still did. Yeah, and people seemed to like what we were doing, so we thought someday it would be really cool if we could do this. We could do this professionally. So in 2020, we had the opportunity. I had the opportunity to sell my company, which was a technology company, and there was a lot of drinking the night before, and it got really, really messy. But what happened is the next day, we all came in, and the people who were coming to buy the company, we were all in really rough shape, and it seemed like none of us really wanted to do this meeting. So I think that's kind of why they just said, halfway through the meeting, they're like, what do you want? And I said, I just want to get out of this room. I'm in so much pain. So I said a number, and we sold the company with the with the help of alcohol. We were able to sell our company, which was good because 5 days later, this little thing called the pandemic happened.
Wow.
So from that pandemic, a few things happened from there. The guy who bought the company actually said, if it had been 5 days later, I would have killed the deal because nobody would buy a company in the pandemic, and we would have totally gone out of business.
Sure.
But it turned out well for them. They made number 5 on Inc. 5000's fastest growing companies in the U.S. Last year, which is really great for them. And I thought, I was very proud of that. And,
Yeah, as you should be.
yeah, but then someone pointed out you had this company for 22 years and you never made the list. So once they
Also
got
fair,
rid of
I
you,
guess, yes.
yeah, no, don't get any ideas. So anyways, that's how we got the money to start buying casks.
Very cool. I mean, there's a lot of freedom to be had with independent bottling. A lot of a lot of things you can do that might not necessarily be able to do it with a standard expression. So it's fun that you guys have been able to kind of dip into that personally and then bring it to kind of a wider spectrum, bringing it out to folks. Clearly, you guys have been doing well enough that it's caught on. But I mean, that being said, I guess to show off how well you guys are at picking this product, I think we should probably just get started and let the spirit speak for itself.
Sure.
That being said, the first expression, what are we looking at?
So the first expression's interesting because we literally bottled it yesterday. I went to Privateer. So what you're seeing here is actually an advanced bottling that we did of this Privateer rum that was aged in the New Riff cask. So there was an event a few weeks ago called Boston Rum Week. So we bottled some advanced bottles of that. But unfortunately, it was not quite 5 years. It was kind of like 4.99999 years. But what you're tasting right now is actually what we poured yesterday. So that is a legitimate five-year rum.
It was just like a couple weeks off, right?
Yeah, we came we came really, really close.
Yeah.
But what's nice about this is that it's a good transition for folks who are, maybe bourbon fans and whiskey fans, but just kind of rum curious, because there's a lot of bourbon in there. Like we literally drove down to New Riff, got the barrel 2 days after it was dumped, wrapped it in plastic, drove it straight to Ipswich, and said, put the rum in there now.
Yeah.
So you're going to get a lot of those classic bourbon notes of, vanilla, caramel. You definitely get the oak structure from that cask. But then you get these wonderful fruit, kind of peach, apricot flavors that really come from the rum itself. And it is a queen share rum. So how many of you are familiar with the queen share process? Okay, all right, good. All right, a few folks. I won't go into like all the nerdy parts of it, but essentially, if you're doing a pot still run, the first stuff that comes off the pot still are your heads, and that stuff will literally kill you. So we don't drink that. We keep the good stuff, which is the hearts, in the middle of the run, and then as things progress, the final cut is where the tails are. That stuff is very dense, very heavy. There's a lot of flavors in it that you generally don't want. But there is like one slice as it's transitioning from hearts to tails where you get your thickest, richest, most flavorful cuts. And the queen share process, they'll take that little slice off, store it. And then the next run, they'll take a little slice off and store it until they get enough to do a secondary run on that.
Sure.
And then you just get, pretty much the best rum that distillery is capable of making. So I hope you guys enjoy that.
Yeah, it's certainly I think their core line, Queen Share, is probably their most popular line that we have here. This kind of shows off exactly what it can do.
Aged for 5 years is what the shares really.
Sure.
Yeah, so I hope it's developing on your palate. You do get the rum flavors, but you should be able to also recognize the heavy bourbon influence in there, which is why we think it's great for a mixed audience like this. I'm just curious, how many people here are for the whiskey? And how many people here for the rum? All right, hey, that's better than normal.
Yeah.
Better than normal. All right. Okay, all right, fair enough. We'll have
Just-
plenty of that.
There's some here just for the show.
Yeah.
Lisa, you had a question? I was just wondering the age on the new riff there.
It was 14 months in New Oak, and then the rest of the time for the 5 years in our barrel. That's specifically for the flavor profile, and then aged it in another barrel to give it the bourbon flavor.
Now, if I remember, was it this barrel that you got from New Riff and you sent to them? Like, was it wet?
5 gallons.
Yeah,
Yeah. So we had done a previous one.
That's what it was, yeah.
And so we had done 2 runs of rum through the first New Riff cask.
Mhm.
But for this one, we're like, we're gonna put Queen Share in it. We got to get make it as wet as possible. So when we went there, we were like, well, we asked for it to be wrapped, and they're like, we're actually not allowed to wrap it. And I'm like, well, luckily I brought my own saran wrap, and then we wrapped it, threw it in the car, drove it straight up, and we were hoping to bottle it around 3.5, 4 years, but we kept tasting it every 6 months. And for those of you who are very familiar with Privateer, they will only bottle twice a year. They'll do it in the spring, they'll do it in the fall, because they don't temperature control their warehouse. So, just imagine New England, it gets super hot sometimes, it gets
Mhm.
super cold sometimes. So the ABV goes up and down, and also the flavor gets tighter and then gets looser. So there's only 2 points at which they'll let us taste it and decide whether we want to bottle it. And it just seems like every 6 months we're like, it's not ready, it's not ready. And finally we were like, why is this taking so long? And they said, well, number one, it's Queen Share, and because of the denseness of that distillate, it ages more slowly, or takes on the oak characteristics of the barrel more slowly than some of their other distillates.
Sure.
And they also said, you idiots gave us a dripping wet barrel. So it's got to fight its way through all of that stuff that's still in there. And like Lori was saying, we were talking to Maggie, and she said,
Maggie Campbell said there was about 5 gallons of bourbon still in the barrel. 5 gallons of bourbon in it.
yeah. So if you're ever aging your own barrels and you're doing Queen Share, don't show up with a dripping wet barrel.
Learning process.
Yeah.
It was a very delicious learning process. Yeah. No, and thoughts on this one, guys? Yeah, it's absolutely rum for a bourbon drinker. Well said. The nose on it, I think, is just fantastic. Yeah. That means, does anyone have any other questions about the Privateer, Her Majesty? Any other info you want to share on this one?
The official bottling of it. So everything that you see here that we'll be doing tonight is in 375 milliliters. Sorry, except for the scotches. Yeah, the three liquids are in 700 milliliters. So this advanced version of Her Majesty is in 375s, but the official bottling of it will be in a 750 in the standard Privateer format.
Oh, it'll be in the Privateer bottle?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
Nice.
Label. Standard format when we won't get it. Probably we're waiting on COLA approval, maybe next week.
Sure. Very cool. Well, that's awesome. Well, that's a perfect transition into the next spirit. And what do we have in store for us on this one?
Yeah, so the next one's called Whistler. So Whistler is from Venezuela, and the cool thing about this one, well, first of all, we're not allowed to tell you the distillery it's from. It's part of the agreement behind us buying this cask. But I will say, if you know the 2 big brands of Venezuela, it's the one that doesn't rhyme with Schlipplematico. It's the other one. This if I had one rum that I had to choose to live with for an entire year on a deserted island, it would be this one, because it basically checks off every checkbox for classic rum. So you get your sweetness from the molasses. You do get some oak structure from the 14 years it's spent in a cask. You do get some spices, you get some chocolate, you get some coffee. It's just this beautifully balanced melange of different flavors. And, so, I call this the everything bagel rum, because, the everything bagel, it's got kind of everything on it. So this is kind of the rum that kind of has everything on it
Sure.
as well.
Yeah, I remember trying this initially, and that first sip was delicious. And I remember doing that, just going in for a second sip, and there was just more that, it was more that I had found for myself. There was a bit of more, like a bit more of that coffee note, a little bit more of those baking spices. So with every sip, you'll find more to, in more flavor or more flavor profiles they come out.
Yeah, and that, I mean, and part of that is why we're, why we really love doing rums, because if you had this distillery's standard offering, it's very good, but they all tend to water them down. A lot of them tend to add sweeteners or glycerin to get more of a mouthfeel to it. But if you just bottle it at cask strength, you don't water it down, you don't mess with it, you get it pure from the distillery. Like it's like, I think that's why rum doesn't have the prominence that whiskey does, because most of the rum you're drinking tends to be adulterated in one way or other. But
Well,
if you get its original format, it's pretty great stuff.
let's hope that what you're doing will allow some prominence to come to
That's the
the
idea.
rum category. Speaking of proof, though, what was just to go back to Her Majesty, what was that proofed at?
That was 58%.
And this one here?
This one I believe is 62%.
Wow.
And it's a good time to bring up, you all have little water droppers in front of you. Those are yours to keep. You can take them home. But all of our spirits are cask strength, and Pablo's are even stronger than ours. So use the water to flavor it till you get it to a place where you like it. That's why we gave you water droppers. So
We also gave you water bottles, so please stay hydrated.
very high proof, all of them. So just so you know.
But that being said, I mean, I honestly, the proof isn't like these aren't tasting as hot as that you would suggest. I mean, you would believe with the proof that I'm reading off the label or you've mentioned to us. I mean, this one alone, it's got spice like and the like pepperiness, but it's not this like aggressive alcohol heat. And I think there's a lot of balance that what you guys have chosen.
Leave some room for the last one.
Yes,
Yeah.
Survive. Please survive.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
make it to the end. Yeah. He's asking about the aging in UK, and we have a slide here. What is gangster juice actually?
Well, there's a funny story with this unnamed distillery. At one point, it was being robbed by these gang members, which is really just kids, right? So they got caught and they were arrested, and the police brought them in front of the distillery owner and said, "Okay, you're going to press charges, so we can send these guys to jail." And the distillery owner said, let me talk to these guys. So he said, "All right, here's the deal. If you work for me for 6 months making rum, I will pay you. And if you do a good job and you don't get into any more trouble, you get to work here forever, and I will drop the charges." So these young gangsters were like, jail, making rum, let's make rum. And they loved it so much. And and they were able to actually start building a legitimate career without a life of crime. So they started telling all their friends. So all these gangsters started working for this distillery, and it turns out a lot of them like rugby. I didn't even know rugby was a big thing in Venezuela, but I guess
Huge with gangs, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they actually had a rugby league of gangsters who actually worked at this distillery. So what you're drinking is pretty much the only rum that's made by rugby gangsters. So, and I think you can taste the crime. If
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That is delicious. It is definitely what out of the what I've tried from you. This is one of my favorites by by far.
Yeah, it's yeah. I could drink this all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not allowed to drink it all day long.
Yeah. Right. Wow.
The other question was about the aging. Yeah. So if you see, so this is a little inside secret. If you're really into rum, if you see that split aging, so in rum they have this distinction between what they call tropical aging, which is where essentially it was aged where it was distilled. So probably someplace really hot, someplace very humid. And it's a little bit like Kentucky, in which case you're gonna get more oak influence in a shorter period of time compared to, let's say, Scotch. So that is what rum people would consider continental aging, where it's a little cooler, it may still be kind of damp, but because of the temperature, it's the aging is much more gentle. So rum people are all like, "I'm macho. I only want tropical aging. Screw all that continental aging. Continental aging sucks." Well, don't tell a Scotsman the continental aging sucks, because all Scotch by definition is continentally aged.
Yeah.
Right. But if you see the split, you can almost always tell what happened to this rum, because there is a company that has actually been a secret for almost 300 years in Amsterdam. They're called E&A Skier.
Shh, it's a secret.
They've been collecting rum longer than we've been a country. So if you're a small company like ours trying to source this stuff, like
Yeah.
we could go to the rum distilleries and say like, hey, would you like to sell us a whole cask of rum? And they're all like, go away. We don't know who you are. We don't want you embarrassing us. And for us to do all this work to give you one cask of rum is ridiculous. So instead, we'll go to a company like E&A Skier, where they've got, hundreds and hundreds of rums for all over the world, all different ages. And they're storing it in their warehouse. So as you can see, this spent 12 years in Venezuela, 2 years in UK. That tells you this is an E&A Skier product.
Oh, okay. There you go. Now it never left the barrel though. Just always just transported.
Sometimes they will re-rack it, because one thing that's great about them with their 300 plus years of experience is they can kind of tell if, because they're obviously tasting this stuff regularly. They can kind of tell like, okay, this needs something, and
Sure.
they may switch it into a port or sherry cask. They may put it into a younger oak. They may actually put it into a more neutral cask.
Okay.
In addition to getting their selection, you're also getting their expertise in aging.
Oh, excellent. That's awesome. I mean, obviously they know what they're doing. This came out fantastic, and you picked something special.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is part of the great thing about being an independent bottler, is that you get to take credit for all the hard work everybody else did, and you slap your label on it and you're good to go.
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff. 1 out of 30 20 or 30 that we try that we buy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys would like to help us, we have these sessions where we have way too many samples, and then we invite people to come in and taste them and help us select them. So
You have my email, John.
yeah, I know. We just have such a hard time finding volunteers for this task. So,
We'll make a list. We'll have them
yeah,
sign
yeah.
up.
Maybe that'll be the next session. We'll just bring all the samples and
Yeah. All right. Absolutely. And thoughts, guys, on the Venezuelan Whistler? Yeah, I'm getting thumbs up. I think that means that they're still drinking it because they're enjoying it. Fantastic. You did a real good pick on this one.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then we transitioned into the final rum of the evening, right?
Yeah. So the third one is actually a blend of single casks. So I mean, typically when you're talking blend, I mean, you all know, like, people are like, oh, blended Scotch, not as good as single cask or single malts. With rum, there's more of a tradition of blending to come up with a multi-layered product. So it's not quite as quite as the black sheep of the family as there is in most whiskey. But still, the single casks are sexier. But at that time when we were starting, when we came out with this, we just needed more products, because we're just starting out. It's just me and Lorri.
Sure.
So we thought, hey, what we could do is we could take a little bit from all of these single casks and put them and make a blend out of it.
Were you drinking when you thought of this, John?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, because I was like,
Mad
we should do with
scientist.
all of these casks, put them all together. That's right. So what you're basically tasting now is a very, very expensive blend that we couldn't sell for what it was worth. So from a financial point of view, it's a disaster, because nobody's going to be putting like 16-year-old Australian rum or 15-year Foursquare Barbadian rum in a blend if they actually want to make money. But we just need another product. So we're never going to do this again, because it just we have enough SKUs at this point.
But you did a hell of a blend.
But so this is so what you're tasting is basically the last time we're going to do this. But it's got Thailand, Guyana, Australia. It's got the Foursquare Barbados. It has the Whistler that you tasted before.
Have you ever seen
Trinidad.
anything with this kind of eclectic, like, grouping? Like
Not in terms of single casks, with the exception of Holmes Key.
Okay.
Came out with their Infinity.
All right.
bottling, which is $1,500 a bottle. So I highly recommend that you all buy some and give us some to taste.
Yeah.
But that is actually a blend that at E&A Skier in Amsterdam, anytime they had a little bit left over, they would throw that stuff in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a very, very high end infinity barrel. So
Yeah.
that's some of the stuff in there is from I think there's 3 or 4 distilleries that no longer exist.
Wow.
In that bottling. So that's yeah. So this is a baby version of that. So,
Still, I mean, what would we saying? There's 7 different in here. What are we saying? 6 in 6 countries. I mean, that's wild. You don't really see that very often.
And I'll tell you, like, if you like a good rum old fashioned that tastes like a real old fashioned, not like a sweet old fashioned, this rum makes a fantastic rum old fashioned. So I know one big ice cube with a little bit of orange, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, that's lovely. And the proof on this one?
so we actually watered this one down a little bit. So we brought it down to 57.5.
Just 57?
Yeah, we did one release where we took 2 62% casks and we said we really want to make an introductory rum. So we watered it all the way down to 55%,
Didn't work.
which turns out to be the worst ABV because if for the people who really like high proof, they're like, that sucks. And for the people who can't handle proof, they're still like, this is way too hot.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, well, I mean, it worked out well. I mean, even here, I don't know. Anyone who can't handle proof, I think would still find this to be enjoyable. It's not really that hot. It's just like the 2 rums preceding it. The proof is not as aggressive as you would assume.
yeah, we found, and you guys probably know this also from whiskey, that if there's a good amount of age going on there, or if there's a finish behind it, or if it's just made really, really well, the alcohol doesn't hit you
No,
as hard.
no. And what's the oldest rum in here?
Probably the 16-year-old Australian from the Beanley Distillery.
Wow, it's very cool. Doesn't it? I mean, it's got like a lot of brown sugar on it. We're just talking about the nose on this here.
Yeah, if you're ever developing your own blends, we kind of learned this the hard way. What you don't do is throw all your stuff together and just drink it right away. Because I was actually at Privateer and I was talking to somebody else, and Andrew Cabot said, "Well, how long did you let it rest before you tasted it?" And I was like, 5 seconds, and he just kind of shook his head. He's like, "No, no, 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 no." 'Cause when you're mixing distillates, not only from different distilleries but also radically different ABVs, there's a chemical reaction that happens, the exothermic reaction. So there's all kinds of like heat and stuff that's involved. And if you're tasting it while all that stuff is still going on, it's going to be very different than after you've given it some time to settle down. So if you're blending large scale, they'll often let it sit for quite a few days before they'll bottle it.
I didn't actually. I had no idea. That's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't either, which is why I thought all my blends were terrible.
What do you guys think of the rum passport? You got a lot of thumbs up and
Yeah, 370. Yeah, all yes,
Yep.
yes, yeah. All those 3 are in 375s, although the official release of Her Majesty will be in 750s.
yeah, this was just an advanced bottling for the Boston Rum Week, right?
Right.
That's what you
right.
said?
Yeah, it's only available in 2 places, another place and here.
Look at that.
And yeah, once those bottles are gone, it's all going to be the 750s.
Very cool.
And it'll also be 2 weeks older.
So be-
It's twice as much rum.
yeah. I mean, even though Lorri said that it was great for cocktails, I mean, even on its own, I think that tastes beautiful. You know, I mean, but I can see that working very well. I mean, even the other ones I could see working well in a cocktail if you really wanted to. But this is fantastic. It's got a lot going on, lot to add to, a little depth to your cocktail. Very cool. That being said, though, now we can move on to whiskeys. We've tried the rums. Your delicious rums. They were very well done. But we are now moving into the realm of whiskey, and we're starting with one of your Linkwoods.
Yeah, so we should talk about the progression that you're going to see. So
Yeah.
we're going to hit you with 2 Madeira finished single malts, one from us, a Linkwood, and then one from Pablo. And then the last 3 will be sherry finished rums. sorry, sherry finished whiskeys. So if you're wondering like why did they pick that order, it's because we wanted you to compare Madeira and Madeira and then sherry, sherry, sherry. Does that make sense? I would definitely leave a little bit, not only because of that, because it's also cool to try the liquid side by side by side, because there's 3 of them, but they all actually came from the same cask
Yeah.
originally. So we bought this sherry butt of liquid. So liquid single malt from Speyside put into a sherry butt. So if you're familiar with the size of our standard bourbon cask, a sherry butt is almost 3 times that size. So if you're a small bottler like us, the question is, can we really sell
Sure.
600 bottles of the same exact thing? And the answer is like, well, no, because we're cowards. We're never going to be able to sell that. So like, but if you just smell it, you're just like, God, this stuff is so good. Like, how
Yeah.
can we not buy this cask? So our solution was to split into thirds. So Emergence, which you'll be tasting later, Emergence is that first third that we just bottled as is. Then we took the second third and we threw that into another sherry cask. And then the final third is what you're tasting now, I believe, Eminence, which we put into a first fill Madeira cask. So the first fill means that obviously it had Madeira in it first, but then we bought it, and as you probably know, like Scotland has to be all aged in Scotland, has to be bottled in Scotland. So as an independent bottler, we're kind of doing all this blind.
Sure.
Like we're buying a Madeira cask, which is quite expensive, just hoping it doesn't completely suck. So this Eminence was about 9 years in the original sherry butt, but then we hit it with 9 months in a first fill Madeira cask, gave it a really heavy hit of
You
Madeira.
just feel like that 9 months it just was tasting like it perfect.
Yeah, and to be honest, we kind of got lucky. Well, you guys should taste it and then tell us what you think. But Madeira in particular, especially a first fill Madeira cask, if you go just a little bit too far, it starts to get quite sour.
Interesting.
But if you age it right and you hit right when it's that sweet spot, you're going to get that Madeira sweetness, but you're going to get some nice sort of soft fudgy, chocolatey notes in it. Hopefully some of that apricot stone fruit stuff to it. And I personally just love Madeira by itself.
I'm a huge fan. Yeah.
But almost nobody drinks this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I think a lot of people actually don't know what Madeira is.
I didn't know until I started working here, to be completely honest. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's essentially it's a wine distillate, but they stop the fermentation early so that there's still a lot of that residual sweetness in the wine. And then they just let it cook, which is weird because generally you're trying not to let your stuff. I mean, you don't put your whiskey bottles up next to a window because you're afraid it's going to cook. Well, in Madeira, they actually sometimes they just put it in these gigantic glass bottles and they just shove it out in the yard and they just let it cook for a year.
Wow.
So Madeira is super, super stable. You can drink bottles of Madeira that are hundreds of years old and they're almost as good as the day that were made. And even if you open them, like I've had bottles of Madeira that I've kept in the fridge for a few years and they still taste really great.
Oh.
So in terms of being an aging component to your whiskeys or to your rums, if you're careful enough, you can usually get something really, really, really nice out of it.
So how often did you have to check the cask to see how it was doing?
Well, this is part of the ugly part of being an independent bottler with Scotland, because it's almost like you're talking to another galaxy.
Yeah.
Because you're like, hello, can I get a tasting of our whiskeys? And then a week later, like, yes, we'll put in the order. And so I envision, that last scene from Indiana Jones where they're just like pushing the lost ark into this gigantic warehouse.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's like when they're trying to find our cask, because it can be like 5 weeks later, they're like, we found it. We pulled it for you. Now we're going to send it to you.
You're like, sick. I wish you guys knew where this was before.
Yeah, I know. So, so by the time it gets through customs and we get it, like we're tasting something like 6 weeks back in time. So it's very, very nerve wracking, because if you taste it and it's overdone,
Mm.
that's it's even worse
Yeah,
than
absolutely.
what you're tasting. So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, Scotch is really tough for an IB.
You guys have been doing pretty good because I mean I really like this one. It's got like a little bit of a white pepper, little pepperiness, which I think was really nice. Not to lead anybody down a path here, but I just thought that was it's really like nice and warming, and the sweetness on the nose. I love like Madeira finish Scotch or whiskey in general, and I think that one's just got a really nice nose on it. How do you guys feel about this one? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that Madeira is really prevalent right in the beginning, and that link you can really sense that liquid right afterwards. Absolutely, well said.
Yeah, we find that people either between the double Rosso one and this Madeira one, almost everybody really prefers one over the other.
Sure, really kind of divisive.
Yeah.
But I mean, I
So
love
if you
that.
hate this one, you'll probably love the other one.
Well, I mean, it's clear that you guys were trying to really still bring out the linkwood, like not mask it with anything, just show off what it's done already, and still keep it at the core of its spirit. I mean, really, if you want linkwood is definitely on the label. You want it to be showcased, properly.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that we pulled the trigger on this one, because I mean, many space sides tend to be more on the lighter, grassier side, and they can't necessarily handle a heavy finish.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing we like about Linkwood is that it's a little heavier than most space sides. It's a
Sure.
little oilier than most space sides. So
It's got a little bit more to give.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly, yeah.
absolutely.
And your margin for error, frankly, is just a little higher when you're dealing with a beefier distillate
That's fair.
than something that's light and graceful.
Oh man, and you know what? Now that transitions into finally, I mean, you guys are probably wondering what Pablo's doing up here. He hasn't done much. So I mean, now it's finally time for him to show what's going on.
Now you remember.
Now, yeah, remember he's up here now because we're now about to transition into Pablo's first expression. Talk to us a little bit about these, the catador.
Yes, well, catador itinerante means itinerant taster in Spanish. Anthony is actually one of the persons that convinced me to use an original name, and I'm from Argentina, so why not?
Absolutely.
So this is my first edition. And you were mentioning earlier about the freedom. One of the cool things about independent bottlers is the freedom that I have to choose. And it's one of the reasons I fell in love with these alternatives to what we see as official bottlings.
Sure.
But also I envision this company as a window to the world. And I think it's a little bit artistic. I imagine myself as some sort of gallery owner.
That's a good way to describe that.
You can bring artists from around the world and put those paintings in a wall. And this is the first one. You are in front of a piece of history, hopefully, edition number 1. And so for all those neighbors that see me in the backyard in shorts, they think I'm unemployed. But actually, I was creating a company. This is the proof.
You're worse than unemployed.
I was tricking them. The one that I can't trick is my wife. So if you like it, please buy it. So when I mentioned earlier that I was in Europe in 2022 browsing for world distilleries, and there's a reason I chose this one. Brogger is in Austria, and it's a family-run business. Actually, I had to go at night because they were working during the day in other things.
Oh, okay.
So this is a very small distillery, but it's supposedly a hobby that they take pretty seriously and through generations. So you're gonna see that it's a solid whiskey. Their approach is a double distillation. They have only one still, so they distill twice in the same still, and they only use the hearts for the second distillation. And John was mentioning about how tricky could be a Madeira cask, and most of the Madeira finishes that you see in Scotland or in Ireland, they're going to be 6 to 9 months, maybe a year.
Mhm.
So this is 9 years finish, and the first 4 years are in Virgin Limousin oak from France. That's how they usually start their whiskeys. This company, this distillery uses three type of woods: Virgin Limousin, Oloroso, and Madeira.
Oh, okay.
And when I asked the owners, why such a long finish? And they were like, well, it kept on getting better. And they distill 6 times a year. They only have a 1,000 liter output, which is ridiculous. We know distilleries that they distill millions of liters a year,
Sure.
and 1,000 liters is nothing. And it's one of the oldest whiskeys they made. They started in 2008 to make whiskey before they were making fruit distillation that is very common in Europe. So this is a 2010, 13-year-old, and when you try, you're gonna see that this 9 years in Madeira, they
9 years.
brought
Ooh.
a lot of fruit. They brought some wood influence too, and it's a it's a type of whiskey that I find complex with layers. When I tried it, I chose this one as my first edition because I wanted to show. First of all, I wanted to bring a smaller distiller compared to other distilleries in Europe, to that has no presence in the U.S. And second, I wanted something bold to start, and I think it's a bold spirit as the last one that you're gonna try. So here you have edition number one, 13-year-old. That for world whiskeys is it's old.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the distilleries around the world, in countries that are not well known about their whiskeys, they started less than 10 years ago. Some of them 15 years ago. So if you find a world whiskey that is 13-year-old, it's relatively
That's
old.
relatively old. Yeah.
Actually, I'm about to purchase the next two editions. They are from Germany. They're gonna be 9 and 7 years old. These are 10 and 13.
So these are definitely on the older end of the
They are
spectrum.
definitely on the older end, and yes, I really like it when I first tried it, and I'm gonna tell you a little more about the last one at the end,
Sure.
but curious about your feedback.
Yeah. What do you guys think of this one here? Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing to
Yeah. I really appreciate that's what we thought when we first tried it. So I'm happy that you guys thought the same thing.
thank you so much.
Ryan, John, and myself, we all thought these were fantastic. So we're happy to present them to you now. So
And in general, I try many world whiskeys, and as them, I have this horrible job of trying samples. And it's, I think they are luckier with rum because in general, it's hard to find horrible rum. You may have a profile and you try to bottle the best you try, but world whiskeys are all around in the spectrum, from very young, from very solid, to companies that I think they can jump into the train of I have a distillery, and you may find whiskeys that I mean one of the distilleries that I visited in Europe, they had a huge warehouse and they were showing me more and more and more, and I was still trying to simulate that I was okay with it, and I was not imagining it being bottled, at least by me. And some of their stuff is good and it was not available. The stuff that they were offering to me, that's another thing. Some world distilleries, they don't really have the stock for you. They are like the production is limited and they are focused on selling their whiskey in their own country, sometimes neighboring country, because if you're part of the European community, then you have deals, commercial deals.
Sure.
But these Austrian guys were one of the first that they reply my emails. That was a good sign. but also I try some whiskeys that I'm like, they are not ready.
Yeah.
I'm from Argentina. Argentina has one or two distilleries that I love, and other distilleries that are still have a long way to become a very solid liquid. And I wish them the best because I want Argentina to be uh, like a reference in South America for whiskey. But whiskey is something that you have to take your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some people, and I would be probably in their shoes doing the same, very excited to be in the market as soon as possible with my 3-year-old. Yes, I had it. This is ready, and it may not be ready.
Yeah.
So yes, this is one that I think it was solid, and
I think they all think it was solid as well. So let's see.
and the next one is gonna be a very different approach, much more subtle, and I'm gonna tell you later about it.
No, absolutely.
Thank
so
you.
I remember you saying that it was you had said that it was a family run and it was more of a hobby. How many people actually work at the distillery?
It's a big family,
It is.
from grandma is in quality control. That I thought that was amazing.
That's great. Yeah.
And they are like 3 generations, and the older generation that is not here anymore, they were doing fruit distillation. But they have like 2 or 3 master distillers that are the older, that recently retired, so
Okay.
they could take even more time with the whiskey. One thing that they mention is that uh, they have a license up to 1,000 liters a year, so they are not really in a rush to expand and pay more to the government and try to find a bigger building, because this is mostly like their distillery is probably the size of this room,
Yeah. Wow.
and they have the next room for the casks, and they have some cask in a bonded warehouse that is part of the government. But this is if you go to their website, that is pretty updated. It's a small. You're gonna see that it's like 10 people, 12 people. One of them works in marketing. One of them works in commerce. 3 or 4 work in the distillation. But really, it's kind of a very serious hobby that I wouldn't call a hobby.
Yeah.
Because it has been 15 years.
Sure.
They have a core range. They are part of festivals. They were in a Jim Murray's Bible. I mean, they are kind of well known, but they don't have presence in the U.S. So
Well,
they
now
were
they do.
also very excited to have their first whiskeys in the U.S. That's one of the reasons that they decided to sell me these 2 casks. Otherwise, they will use it in their local consumption for Austria, and they will sell it. But another funny thing I wanted to mention is that they don't reuse casks. So whatever they receive from, first of all, the limousine casks are very expensive and very good quality. And I remember a funny story by Dr. Bill Lumsden in one of the limited editions of Glenmorangie when he was in Boston years ago, and he explained that one of the reasons he wanted a limousine cask was because it was like a very good wood that you could work and recharge and create for your own ideas. But the fact that it was an ex-wine cask, he had people coming to him after tasting saying like, I really feel the wine expression in the whiskey. And he would say like, no, you don't. It's in your mind because I recharged it 4 times. But first of all, the limousine oak, it's hard to find and it's expensive. And they use it virgin, they don't reuse it. The Madeira, you also said, it's not easy to find, and a lot of whiskeys are trying to finish in Madeiras now. So people look for Madeiras, but once they bottle this, I wanted to buy the cask, and they say no, we're gonna turn it into furniture. And I'm like, can you please repeat that? Yes, and actually, someone in another tasting told me, did you ask them if they could please sell you a table in the shape of a cask? So they just play around with this cask. They say that our whiskey is kind of layered and complex. So once the Madeira cask has broker whiskey, they cannot reuse it in another release to bring the Madeira influence, because that cask already has Madeira plus broker whiskey. It's
Gotcha.
not just a pure Madeira cask. And by the way, the Madeira cask they have is from a well-known bodega called Enriquez and Enriquez. And
really?
yes,
Oh, that's very expensive Madeira.
it's so yes, it's special. And the Oloroso they don't know. You're gonna try the Oloroso at the end, and I think they bought an empty first fill Oloroso from a broker that sold sherry cask, but this one they know is from Enriquez and Enriquez,
Wow.
and so it's a cool.
So somebody is sitting on an Enriquez and Enriquez bench.
I,
Wow.
and I wonder if they drank all that Madeira and
Yeah,
then they
that's-
use it for whiskey.
I was mad before, but now I'm furious.
Yes.
Oh, really?
They are sitting in their own furniture, made from casks.
Yeah. Do you have their address? We can-
Yeah, exactly. Were there any other questions about this, the first expression from Pablo? No? Well, that's fantastic, because
Well,
that means we can.
Anthony?
Oh, actually, yeah.
I hope to create a relationship because I like them, but not really to repeat whiskeys, at least for a while. I mean, my idea for the company is to show different countries. The reason I had two here, in my ideal fantasy world, I wanted to launch with two countries. And when I talked to the logistics company, the people in charge of transportation, that they are actually from Scotland, uh, when I told them I have a second cast that is only 2 hours in a truck, somebody has to drive and bring this whiskey. They're gonna pick it up in Broger. They're gonna go to the next country that is in the border, only 2 hours driving. Then you send them in a boat to the U.S. And they were like, that 2 hour truck will cost you a lot of money because we cannot put there books and chickens. It's going to have to be just your cast, dedicated truck. It has hazmat materials, it has alcohol. The driver has to know how to handle the paperwork and how to tie them together. So at the end, I decided that, to take advantage of the cost of the transport, being such a small company that I am. And these are things that I've talked a lot with John and Lorri because they are doing this a few years before me. So every mistake that they did, they are like, don't do this. And I'm like, thank you. It only took me 1 minute. So the best I could do to use for the same money, the pallet would fit two casks. So I had to go back to Broger and tell them, I have good news. I'm going to buy you two casks from you. So I have this Madeira that I love that is it's unpeated. And I remember trying one Madeira that is smoked.
Okay.
And they were like, it's gone. So I'm like, do you have anything that is smoke? And the way they smoke, I'm going to tell you more later how they do it. So we continue. But they were like, the only thing we have available right now to sell you as a single cask, it's this one. And I receive it and I like it. I was lucky. So that's what I have these two. In the future, I'm moving to two from Germany, from the same distillery. And a few months later, I'm going to be bringing another country. And every 2-3 months, I'm going to be releasing two more single casks until I'm growing to, and I have a chance to bottle more and more. And at some point that I run out of countries that have the single cask that I want.
Yeah, once you make it around the world, you'll.
Once I make it around the world with whiskeys that are affordable and that I like and that they are willing to sell, because if I try a lot and they are not willing to sell, then I have to repeat countries. But for example, Germany has like 200 distilleries, almost as in Scotland. So I have prospects in countries. Austria has a few more, not as many, but I'm going to try to not repeat distilleries unless I manage to create a passport like they did and I decide to put together
Like a blend of your own. there?
a world blend, but that's way in the future.
Yeah, that's a good thought. That's
I
great.
highly
interesting.
recommend it.
Yeah.
Save a little bit, put it all together,
And lose money like
and
you.
sell it for half the price that it's worth. It's like,
Yes.
I can't recommend it more highly.
Getting the loss leader.
Yeah.
Was there any other questions for Pablo? All right. Well, that's an easy move on to the next two spirits, and we're back to John. Explain to us, what are we looking at next?
Okay, yeah, so now we're going to do the 3 sherry finished. So the next one, I believe that's number 6, is the emergence. So this is what we got straight out of that sherry butt. So we didn't do a secondary finish at all. But yeah, I can already see some of you are looking at this going like, this was 9 years in sherry butt. And then you look at like Pablo's, you're like, I don't believe it for a second. So clearly this was not a first fill sherry butt. This probably had at least one run, if not multiple runs through it. But what is kind of cool about it is that it did spend all 9 years in this refill sherry cask. So you can probably tell just from like the nose itself, like the florality on the nose almost sold us immediately. I keep telling Lorri, just dab a little bit of this behind your ears and you're good to go. So this is kind of a rare case where you've got full 9 years in a very used sherry cask. So all that sherry influence is very much integrated into the distillate. So if you're like one of these super dark sherry fans, you want the sherry monsters, this is not going to be your thing. But if you just want that kind of light kiss of sherry that also still lets you taste that wonderful liquid distillate, this is a really great example of that. So yeah, it came in at about 60%. This is volume 1 because this is we did. That one should have been
This is volume 1.
Yeah, sorry, it should have been this order.
Oh.
Yeah, so we started with volume 3, and then we went back to volume 1 because volume 3 was the Madeira, so we wanted to put the 2 Madeiras together. Yeah, so this is basically the light sherry finish on that one.
Yeah, I mean, still, like, you still get plenty of Oloroso on the palate and especially on the nose. But I mean, obviously, yeah, even when you showed this to me originally, I did the same thing. I was like, really?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and liquids really cool. But it's so hard to find any liquid straight up because most of it goes into Johnny Walker, right? It's a Diageo product. So most people who have had liquid have had the Gordon MacPhail 15, which is kind of a classic liquid. So this is
Sure.
very much in that same vein as the ABV is a little higher, and there's obviously a little more sherry influence than there was in the GMM.
Donna, you have a question? Just asking about the
yeah.
artwork on the bottle.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you asked. So it's kind of an inside joke. If you're a video gamer, you might know Legend of Zelda and the
Yeah, this dork picked it up right away. I'm
right.
sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sure. Yeah. So the name Link is the main character. So we said Link Wood. We're like, yeah, we should do this. So we have a friend whose daughter, she was actually 16 years old when she did this. So that's kind of not cool to ask a 16-year-old to do artwork for something they can't even drink. We said, can you imagine what Link would be if Link was a female? And we want you to do 3 renditions of this. So when she's just starting off, so emerging, and then when she's growing a little bit older, which is the next one, ascendance, so she's ascending, and then the final one was the Madeira, which is called the eminence. So yeah, so every single one of our bottles, we hire an artist to do original artwork that's based on some kind of cultural figure, and it's supposed to be from the country that where the juice was made. But we made exception for this because we're immature and we wanted to do a Legend of Zelda tribute.
You can see that I'm very mature.
Yeah. 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 Funny story about this. Yeah. Usually we show the slides on this, but people do ask like, why aren't you showing her face? And the original version, like you could see her face, and so we submitted it to the TTB in the U.S. and we thought if we're ever gonna have a problem, they're gonna be like, "Hey, this looks like Zelda, and we don't like this artwork." But the U.S. was, "Yeah, you're good to go." And so we told Scotland, "Okay, we're ready to bottle it." And like, well, we have to get it approved by the Scottish Whiskey Authority. I'm like, those drunks, they'll approve everything. And of course, they came back. They're like, "No, you can't do that." I'm like, "Why?" Like, because your label appeals too much to children, and 4-year-olds are going to run into a liquor store and grab this bottle, and you're going to ruin their lives. And we're like, okay, fine. So we aged her up, we made her a little taller, and they're like, no, she still looks too young. Like, what if we just hide her face and can't tell how old she is? And they're like, okay, you're good to go. So
There you go. Well, I love the artwork. That's awesome.
yes, thank you.
That's awesome. What do you guys think of this one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. That
Yeah, I absolutely suggest adding a couple drops of water. Yeah, just to open it up a little bit. But it's, I mean, on its own, obviously, it tastes fantastic. Again, the heat's really not that prevalent.
Yeah, some people do ask like, why do you bottle everything at cask strength? Why don't you water it down to where it's optimum, balance between the flavor? Because because some people are like, yeah, you're just trying to get people drunk, and well, yeah, but still, the alcohol itself is a solvent, so a lot of those flavor compounds dissolve in alcohol. So in some ways, alcohol is a carrier of flavor, and the higher ABVs can give you more intense flavors up to a point. And then at some point, the alcohol actually starts interfering with your ability to taste because of the numbing effect of ethanol. So if that happens to you, that's why we always provide the droppers, and we definitely encourage people to water it down to the point where they think it's optimal. But for us to kind of choose what's optimal for all of you, it's kind of a fruitless exercise. So that's why we generally will go cask strength.
It's got this real like lightness to it. Yeah, whiskey concentrate.
That's right. Yeah, people go like,
Absolutely.
oh, well, these are in 700s, but like, what about your rums? Why are they in 375s? Like, oh, just think of it as concentrate.
Yeah,
Just like, you can make it as much as you want.
Extend that bottle a little bit.
Add water, but you can't take water out.
Right.
So we'd like to let people choose what's right for their palates.
There you go. Absolutely. Any other questions about about this one here? That was the one that was just at 9 years, the first volume finished in Oloroso, right?
Right.
Or
Yeah,
Asian Oloroso.
the original sherry
And
Oloroso cask.
This next one is an additional maturation in Oloroso, correct?
Right. Yeah. So we anticipated that the sherry Finax would be like, yeah, this is nice, but I don't get enough sherry in it. We're like, okay, here we go. So we got another Oloroso cask, obviously not like like a super refill cask, but we also made it a quarter cask. So I can see some of you nodding your heads already. So when you're aging it in a smaller cask, the ratio of surface area contact to the liquid is higher, because you put it in a gigantic cask, you have all this stuff in the middle that's not actually touching any wood. You shrink the cask down, it's like, okay, well, a higher percentage of it is touching wood, so I always say it ages faster, which is not true. There's more aging component that happens over a shorter period of time. So yeah, we really wanted to hit the Oloroso harder for people who wanted that, and you can tell just by the the difference in color. That's 9 months difference, and it's a pretty stark difference, not only in the way it looks, but in the way it tastes as well. So for those who really like that kind of Oloroso, this has more of it, almost to the point where you get, I mean, sulfur is very divisive, but some people kind of like that little bit of matchstick sulfur feel to it. This has that to it. So people who are into that, kind of heavier, darker Oloroso influence, and they like that.
It's like it's a flavor component that like I know it's there and I can't really like put my finger on it until someone says it. And I'm like, that's right, that's what it is. It's the sulfur. But it's not an off-putting flavor. I mean, it can be. It can if it's too aggressive or it's too like forward facing, but I think this one's like well balanced in the spirit.
Yeah, there's like matchstick sulfur, which a lot of people like, but then you get to rotten egg sulfur, which nobody likes that stuff. Sulfur the what?
Yes. Oh, that's lovely. I really like that. It's got this like almost like like velvety mouthfeel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm
Alright.
really getting with it.
Yeah, I'm
Very
a
nice.
Madeira guy. Laurie's the sherry person.
What do you guys think of this one in that the second maturation? It's very nice.
Yeah, one of the fun things about doing these side by side is it's very rare that you get to taste the original stuff and then find out if the people really messed it up later. So,
I thought that was like a really cool idea that you had. I mean, just trying them side by side with Pablo's, and just trying the progression. You know, just seeing them how one spirit kind of just evolved with the second maturations.
yeah, that's why we like teaming up with Pablo. You know, other than the fact that we distribute him and we want his money, but and we like him as a person.
And I need to know their mistakes.
Right.
remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know, when you taste like kind of like moderate Madeira, then heavy Madeira, then you go
Mhm.
from light sherry, medium sherry, heavy sherry.
Mhm.
I think you learn a lot more from these progressive tastings than just getting a smattering of random stuff. So we always try to do things that are progressive so that people can really learn like, oh, you know, okay, I like Oloroso, but I don't like that much, you know.
And what's the proof on this one?
This one is 59. So it went from 60 in volume one, Emergence, to 59 for this double Oloroso, and the Madeira that you tasted earlier was 58. So it went down a little bit each time.
Interesting.
In my case, it went up.
The
The one you're gonna try, it's off the roof.
Hence the reason we threw that one at the end there. Absolutely. I mean, I thought that was a really good spread of the liquid expression. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I love Linkwood, and I have to confess that I was a little scared of putting my crazy whiskeys from a country that not a lot of people have tried whiskeys next to the finesse of and like you call it velvety of these Linkwoods,
Yeah.
right? But I think that if you open your minds to try world whiskey, it's a nice experience, especially after trying some cool rums.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what we're here for. We're liquid to lips, learning. We all are interested in the category of spirits, and we're all willing to learn. And it doesn't hurt that we get to try it.
Yeah.
I keep telling Pablo, like, you being afraid of our stuff is like Mike Tyson being afraid of Ralph Macchio and the Karate Kid. I don't you have nothing to worry
But I'm
about.
pretty sure that in Hollywood, Ralph Macchio wins.
Oh my God! Bite the ear.
I don't remember that one. Or sweep the leg.
Yeah,
Xander
Holyfield definitely remembers
remembers,
that.
but he can't hear what you just said. so.
That actually leads us right into Pablo's spirit,
Yeah.
which is awesome. If you guys want to get knocked out, this is the one to do it.
So first of all, talking about the art, this is a very different approach. I work with a design studio in Argentina, very small, two young guys, very creative. And when they knew about my trips and about the blog and the fact that I had a book, and actually you can pass it around later if you want to explore.
Yeah.
My blogs and my podcast turned into a book in Spanish. You can learn Spanish or you can give it to a friend, but it's a whiskey book, and they use the same branding for this type of kind of journal exploration, with the way they design these labels that you can see close later, and actually every country will have a different stamp. They hook me, they made it, and now I fell for it. So every time I have a new expression from a different country, I'm gonna have to pay for a new stamp. You know? But I'm supporting a small business in Argentina.
Just
But-
two younger gentlemen just doing that label for you. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually they are a solid company. It's a solid amount of great clients if you see them online.
That's awesome that you're putting back into your country, though. You know.
Yeah, definitely. So this number 10 is actually it's actually produced with smoked barley. So this is not peated barley. They it's a company in Germany that works with a lot of breweries and companies that make beer, and they just smoke the barley. They dry the barley using beech wood, and you're gonna get this layer of smoke that is not the typical peated whiskey that we are used to, that is more floral, more herbal, more earthy. This is gonna be a little more woody, but I think it's an interesting because it turns some of the notes into some type of chocolate or burnt caramel. I don't. When I tried it, I didn't find something like barbecue, something like. I mean, I remember an Irish whiskey that used put some smoke inside the cask,
Sure.
and they you can smell the wood burning. And in this case, I think the layer is different. This is not a finish. This is 10 years in first fill Oloroso, but with that extra layer of medium smoked barley. That, of course, it goes all the way to the end through the distillation, like peat. So it's it's more like cooked fruits. It has a little bit of licorice in it. It's
There's a
the-
lot going on with this.
the first one is not completely like straightforward Madeira fruit.
Mhm.
It has this also these layers of it could be a tiny bit sulfury, um, but the second one, um, I was uh, I was telling it wasn't a joke when I said that it went up, because actually, first of all, this second cask, when it was in the bonded warehouse, and they told me that they don't know why, but when they put whiskey in that bonded warehouse, I don't know if it's the way that that warehouse is uh, ventilated,
Okay.
or the way the climate work in that building, but some of their whiskeys go up and some of their whiskeys go down. This one went up, and when it came to the US and we did the final measure in the bottling facility, it went up again.
No way.
So that could, unfortunately, that could be just a measuring system,
Sure.
tools, but the reality is that I had to bottle with the number that the bottling facility ends up, and this was 71.6. I tried to lower it down to 68, 69. It completely changed the flavor. I was disappointed, and I ended up, because I was a little concerned of people buying a bottle and then you have to go on a plane, and technically you can't.
It's illegal.
It's illegal. So if TSA opens your luggage and they find this, if they have a good site, if they don't use if they have to use glasses, they may not even see this. But if they find that it's 71.6, they will be like, oh, you cannot travel with this. And also, if I had to hire trucks, transportation, etc., it has to be, it's hazmat level.
Mhm.
But some other people told me, I would kill you if you put it under 70, because I never try whiskeys over 70. So yeah, I'm going to have one of these bottles at home.
The closest I
So-
think I've ever tried was 139. So
No,
this is
close.
just over.
That's close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just over that. So that's wild. Yeah,
This
I mean,
is-
I remember trying it and definitely felt the heat, but I mean, again, 71. I thought this drank very nicely. You add a little bit of water, it opens up beautifully. But only drop of water. You don't really need too much. I think it's beautiful the way it is. I think it shows a really amazing spirit.
Thank you.
There's folks that have tried it. Myself, Ryan, John. There's a reason we brought these in, and we had folks try them. Afterwards. And we've sold a couple bottles just based on that, just because it's so interesting and different. Coming from Austria, I don't think I've ever had anything coming from Austria, so it's really nice to just kind of
Yeah.
expand our shelves a little bit, kind of show off again what you're trying to do with your company, just trying to show off what different countries can do. So
Definitely. Thank you so much.
mhm.
Yeah.
And any thoughts about the second one?
It there is something to be said about how you guys have been picking some of these spirits. You guys definitely got a knack for it. Clearly, I haven't been able to try something at these proofs and not feel that burn, that heat. Trying these, I could try these neat and enjoy these neat as is. I don't need to add a drop of water. It certainly opens it up. But I think that's what's so great about what the spirits that you guys have presented to us tonight.
Yeah, what I loved
Thank you.
about this, the smoked cherry on this is that
Mm-hmm.
like we've seen people who say they hate peat who still love this.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have all that kind of iodine and all that vegetable.
Oh yeah,
kinda, like,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
It's not like a cigar smoke or anything like that. You
Right.
know, that
Yeah.
ashtray or that earthiness that you get. I mean, there's a little bit of that umami in there, but it's
Yeah.
you know, I think it's on the a different end of the spectrum.
Yeah, you don't get that tar.
Yeah,
that-
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. A little bit different. Yeah, certainly a little bit different. Smoked is not peated for sure, for sure. Just in case anyone might think otherwise, smoked is certainly different than peated.
I wouldn't be able to use a label here that is video game. Sorry.
No. Next release. Next release.
Unless you know the cough syrup, then lollipop. That
Yeah.
that could bring
work.
kids. That could bring kids.
There
You
you
know?
go.
Yes.
Fantastic. And I would never guess it was 70%. I think it's really, really good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, off the first sip that I tried, Ryan asked me to guess what I thought the proof was, and I was definitely off by like 10%. So I thought, when he asked the question, I was like, it's got to be over 50, but I would have never guessed 71. So you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions or? No, I ain't no one mad at this one. I agree, Matt. I agree. I agree. The stellar tasting. I really appreciate it, guys. You got a fantastic spread all along. Pablo, I appreciate you coming in. John, Lori, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
These are all available upstairs. So really, guys, go up, support these guys. They've been doing some fantastic work. Thank you so much. And goodbye to everyone out on Facebook. And again, thank you guys for coming in and enjoying us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And also follow us on Instagram.
Yes. Follow them on Instagram so you can see what other projects they have coming up.
Yes. Subscribe to newsletters.
Well, thank you so much.